It's my pleasure now to introduce again Congressman Mac Thornberry, who is our first witness, and he is the congressman of the 13th District in Texas. He currently serves as the vice chairman of the Armed Services Committee, where he also leads the subcommittee on emerging threats. He continues to serve the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence as well. Earlier this year, Congressman Thornberry was tapped by the Speaker of the House and Majority Leader to spearhead a cybersecurity task force to guide House legislation action on this growing economic and national threat. On October 5th, the task force released their recommendations, which have been well received from Republicans and Democrats, the White House, private businesses, and other organizations. Thank you for being here. We look forward to your testimony. Congressman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and Ranking Member, Mr. Schilling. I appreciate the chance to be here. I've submitted a written testimony, and if it's all right, what I'd like to do is just kind of summarize into 4 points. One is I appreciate you having this hearing. One of the major findings of our task force is that there is a tremendous gap in what's really happening and most people's awareness of what's happening. That's true in the population. It's true among members of Congress. And our view is that first we have a responsibility to educate ourselves and then try to help our communities understand what a serious issue this is. I've recommended that the Speaker and Minority Leader have a classified briefing for all members because I think all members really need to get a better understanding of what we're facing. I also, just as a test case a few weeks ago, took a cyber expert with me to my district. And in one town we had a special meeting of the Chamber of Commerce. In another town it was a joint meeting of the Chamber of Commerce and the biggest service club. Just to talk about this issue, he could answer the technical questions, but just to try to raise awareness from small businesses in my area. And I hope maybe that's something that other members may want to consider in the future. Second point I'd make, and both of you have made it in your opening statement, small businesses are affected by this. No one should believe that because I'm a small business in Amarillo, Texas, I don't have to worry about it. It's simply not the case. What we also have come to learn is that not only are small businesses in the crosshair of those seeking to perpetrate crime and steal intellectual property, a lot of times small businesses are subcontractors that are used to get to larger contractors. A lot of times, increasingly, in fact, lawyers and accountants are targets in order to get their clients' records. So there's some careful planning going on here, but small businesses are particularly in the crosshairs. And every time they steal intellectual property from a small business, they are stealing jobs from the United States. So it's obviously a national security issue, but as both of you have rightly pointed out, it's also an economic issue that is very important. Third, I would say that this is a big, complicated issue that Congress cannot solve in a single bill, and we shouldn't try. I think y'all have mentioned that it touches most aspects of our lives, most aspects of business life these days. 85% roughly of the infrastructure we're talking about protecting is owned by the private sector. So government is not going to come in and solve all of this, but we can take steps to help protect the country, and obviously that's what we need to do. Fourth and lastly, the task force you've both mentioned have made recommendations as far as a general framework on what Congress could do during this session of Congress. And that was the Speaker's instruction to us. Don't try to solve all the problems in the world, but look at what we can do that will make a significant difference that could get passed during this session of Congress. And our recommendations have drawn on a lot of previous work that members of both sides of the aisle have done. But I have been pleased at the bipartisan support, not only in the House, but from senators. The White House has spoken positively of it. So I think there is a real opportunity to act here. There's lots of differences we have between the parties, between the different houses of Congress on a variety of issues, but this is one where I think we can work together, and I think it's essential that we work together to try to begin to take those steps in the right direction. So again, I appreciate your questions that I can answer.
Well, I definitely echo those comments about the importance of us all working together on a bipartisan manner on this issue. I think we all see the very, very important aspects of it. I just have a couple questions, and then I'll yield to Mr. Richmond, the ranking member. My first question for you, Congressman, is the recent report from the National Counterintelligence Executive Agency revealed that China and Russia are behind a majority of cyber attacks, and that is obviously deeply, deeply disturbing. In your opinion, how does the small business that's out there right now dealing with all of the issues with the economy, how can these small businesses deal with these attacks right now? And what and how should the United States respond to this as a nation?
I would say two things, and they are really the central recommendations of our task force. Number one is what's called good hygiene. It is the basic things that we all know we should do, but too often don't do. Keeping our firewalls up to date, our virus protection up to date, not having our passwords underneath our mouse pads in our offices, which a defense contractor told me he just went and checked in one of his offices and found that was the case in a large number of his employees. And the task force received information from a variety of witnesses saying roughly 3/4 of the malicious stuff out there on the internet could be stopped if we all did the basic stuff we know we're supposed to do. You know, the reason they call it good hygiene, it's because it's kind of like washing your hands and coughing in your sleeve and getting enough sleep and drinking enough water, the basic things that keep us healthy. It can keep the internet healthy too. So small businesses, it doesn't take a lot of money, but you need to do the stuff you know you should do. Secondly, though, when you talk about Russia and China, if Russia and China is targeting somebody, good hygiene won't be enough. And so our second central recommendation is to update some laws to allow information sharing where we can use, especially internet service providers, to help defend us against these more sophisticated threats. And so I think you got to do two prongs, basic hygiene, but also update our laws so that we can bring all the resources of government and the private sector to bear against these more sophisticated threats.
Thank you. My next question for you, there again, comes from our small business owners. And they're basically saying that, you know, one of the big issues, and we hear this repeatedly, is the threat of regulations and dual regulations, especially those industries defined as critical infrastructure. As a two-part question here, first, has this issue been adequately addressed? And in your opinion, do you believe that small businesses should be subjected to the same regulations or federal standards as larger businesses regarding cybersecurity compliance?
It certainly has not been adequately addressed, and I think this gets to where there is a difference of opinion between the White House proposal that came out in May and the task force recommendation. The White House recommended basically that critical infrastructure businesses develop a cybersecurity plan which would be sent to the Department of Homeland Security for evaluation and kind of a thumbs up or thumbs down. Our view was that we ought to rely on existing regulators. So for the electric industry, FERC and NERC and the existing regulators, the Nuclear Power Regulatory Commission for nuclear power plants, et cetera. In other words, these structures are in place. They help understand the fuller spectrum of what these businesses are dealing with. And they need to put a greater emphasis on cybersecurity. Now, we're going to have to work through how to do that, but I think I'm concerned, as you mentioned, about layering additional regulations, particularly on small businesses that have a difficult time affording what they got now.
Thank you. Thank you for outlining that. There again, you know, that having to report to more than one agency, these different, you know, duplicative just adds to the cost of doing business as well. So my last question, in actually talking about federal agencies, Of course, federal agencies play a key role in protecting against cyber attacks. Considering our committee, Small Business Committee, and its jurisdiction, what do you think the appropriate role is for the Small Business Administration?
My sense is the most valuable thing is the awareness and help small businesses have the tools to know how to defend themselves. And if you can do that, where you don't have to go hire an outside consultant or so forth, if you can just help direct small business to the kinds of things they need to do with that good hygiene we were talking about, I think that would be a tremendous help to small business. But again, when you help all those small businesses, you're also helping the whole internet, because you reduce the clutter that's out there, and that helps the more sophisticated entities target those more sophisticated threats.
Thank you so much for answering my questions. I'm going to yield now to Mr. Richmond for his questions.